So, how many of you attended the morning session with Travis? Right. How many of you got that? I mean, of course, he's known for having raised lots and lots of money, right? But how many of you got that the horror story he had with investors? Okay. Okay, in this session, what we will talk about is VC funding may or may not be the right choice for you. And I think most entrepreneurs, most of us, don't really get to hear what are the alternatives. And I see a lot of entrepreneurs end up chasing venture capital when they could be doing better things, right? So venture capital may or may not be the right choice for everyone, and that's what the session will be all about. I think we have an amazing panel here. We have 5 different entrepreneurs in 5 different sectors who've grown very large businesses and scaled up without external funding. Okay. My pleasure to welcome all of them. Could I request you all to join in? And we'll, of course, start with Dr. Money, since this session is all about money. So Dr. Velumani is the founder of ThyroCare, right? Ashok, can I have you? Ashok is actually giving Uber and more like Ola a run for his month's money. And again, doing it bootstrapped, again, an amazing story. Welcome, Ashok. Ajay? Ajay's built an amazing trust platform, right? And again, doing it bootstrapped. Ajay. Venki? Venki is a banker turned food entrepreneur, right? And again, a very amazing story you'll hear. Come, please. And last but not least, Raj. Raj is from Zoho, and I think everybody's heard of Zoho as the, a global technology, successful global technology company, and again, bootstrapped. So I think 5 amazing stories. Could I just request to go around and do a quick, brief background, brief introduction, Ajay?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So my name is Ajay Trehan. I founded Authbridge in 2005. So we've been in business for about 11 years, largely bootstrapped. We are today one of the largest companies in the business of enabling trust. We work with large organizations, small organizations, to help them to give them technology, platform, and services that help them build trust bridges with their employees, so in the form of employee background screening services, to build trust bridges with their customers in terms of KYC services. We help them do due diligence on their partners, franchisees, and things like that. So it's largely a trust platform company, and we built it completely bootstrapped, and it'll be fun to share some of those experiences with you. Look forward to it.
Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Subhinder, for giving me a chance to praise myself. So I started this company called WTI in 2009 and completely bootstrapped. And we are into the corporate space. And today we are also working on the MSP part for transportation, which is globally the only organization who's working on transport MSP. So prime objective is if we are able to decongest the roads and maybe reduce some pollution and at the same time bring some optimization. So thanks.
Good morning. I am quite familiar to the Thai community. I am from Coimbatore. Traveled to Mumbai with 500 rupees in my pocket in 1982. And worked for 15 years in government, got fed up with things not moving, and then I left the job, took a risk, invested 2 lakh rupees into business. I have never borrowed. I have a banker with whom my 100 crores is lying with him. And I don't think anybody else can talk about in business how to remain frugal as much as I can talk. While during the discussion, I'll tell you what made that very powerful. Today it's a listed company and it is a $500 million worth. And I'm happy to be here, and certainly I will get you out of this room when you go a bit lighter than whatever stress you have had.
I am Venki Iyer. I am the founder CEO of Goli Vada Pav, and I spent 15 years in corporate finance. And somewhere after spending 15 years in corporate finance and born and brought up in Mumbai, I felt, can I corporatize Vada Pav? Can I make Vada Pav a brand? Can I give a place for Vada Pav amongst the burgers and the pizzas of the world? This was a single statement that was bothering me. And today, luckily, after 10 to 12 years of struggle, we have some 300 plus stores in 100 cities and 22 states across India. And a lot of business schools like Harvard, IMD, ISB did a case study. And we are ranked as the 6th largest fast food chain. And last 3 years, we have been getting the most admired fast food chain of Indian origin, along with Domino's, Starbucks, and McDonald's. I think that's the journey that we had.
Good morning. I am Rajendran. I represent a company called Zoho. Zoho is a software powerhouse which focuses on building productivity suites for companies like yours on the cloud. So we've been around for 20 years now. We started in a small shack above the house of the owner. And VCs hate us, investors hate us, stock markets hate us, simply because in the past 20 years we have had multiple acquisition offers and investment opportunities, and consistently our CEO has been bouncing them away, saying it's a special thing to build and bootstrap by yourself. So I'm here to share stories about that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Raj. Thank you, everyone. So actually, and believe it or not, most of the people on the panel undersold themselves. They've done some amazing stuff, and hopefully we'll bring that out in the next whatever 1 hour we have. So one thing we all know, right? To start a business, you need capital. You need a capital for building your product, for your R&D, for your facility, for hiring employees, for marketing, right? But how do you manage without capital? How do you market without capital?
To start with, I'll just give you a small brief. I had this idea that Vada Pav should be a brand across India, but we didn't have that kind of capital to start, a large chain, company-owned store, manufacturing process. So we thought about an outsourcing business model. I went to the people who make burger patty for McDonald's in India, an American company, and said, why don't you make vadas for us? Luckily, they agreed and they started making the vadas, a 50 crore plant, American joint venture for Vada Pav. I went to the people who do logistics for McDonald's, Domino's, and said, why don't you help me supply this across India? Again, I didn't have to invest in the logistics nor on the plant. I went to the people who make sauces for Unilever and others and said, why don't you make chutneys for us? So to a large extent, people said, itna bada business banane ke liye, you have to invest in plant, you have to invest in logistics, you have to invest in chutney making, but everything happened through outside, not inside. So frugally, we built this business without any capital, only with the idea. Franchisees invested in the business. Now coming to the main question, the branding part, I can share a small example of
You hired some celebrity endorsers, I hear.
So, when we started the business, the first thing was we were at Kalyan station, and one of my franchisees asked me, we need branding, marketing hona chahiye. And this was at 7:30 in the evening, and huge crowd, 5 platforms, more than 30-40,000 people would be there. It was raining, and he was pestering me, sir, humko marketing chahiye. And we didn't have any capital. And I went to the railway announcement board, and I told them, टुन्नू की मम्मी कहाँ भी हो आ जाइए, टुन्नू खो गया है और टुन्नू गोली वड़ा पाव के दुकान में खड़ा है. The railway announcement people announced it for 8 to 10 times, and you won't believe, 9:30 the shop closes. That day 7:30 all our goods got sold. My team members liked it very much. Yeah, we can have a round of clap for that. Yeah. And every day somebody would get lost in Kalyan station. Koi Raju, koi Ramesh, koi. In 1 month's time, railway authorities thought this was some kind of scam. So initially when we didn't have capital, we did this. The second time when we did was, there is somebody who looks exactly like Sachin Tendulkar, and I saw him in a Ludhiana truck. I gave him a wig, I gave him a sunglasses, a Goli Vada Pav t-shirt, and he speaks like Sachin, Aila Sachin, Aila. So he goes to Nagpur, he goes to Amravati, Bhopal, Chandigarh, and inaugurates Goli Vada Pav stores with a bat, with a pad, and a lot of people come and take autograph from him, exactly Sachin lookalike, and the local media also covers him. So we found always some way or the other, without spending money, to get the what you call the marketing part going on.
Very interesting, right? And Ashok, I think you have a similar story, right? You had to build a huge fleet of cars to service your corporate customers.
When you talk about the car rental business, it is very capital intensive. And moment you talk about 200, 300, 400 cars, you are bound to face some HR and IR issues, which happens with most of the our driver folks. So innovation always comes through compulsion. And that's how this innovation come today, what maybe Uber or Ola talks about. And this innovation came in 2002 when I started something called DCO, which was a driver come owner scheme for a car rental business, where the driver becomes the owner of the car. And after that, scaling up a business was never an issue, because you can buy the car, you can give it to the driver, and there are certain ways and means by which you can ensure the safety and other stuff. But then scalability was never an issue, and today, in a span of 5 to 6 years, we have a portfolio of around 3,000 plus cars, and it is only possible because this compulsion was there that, okay, the banks will not fund in the initial stages. When you're starting your business, the most important thing is the cash flow more than the profit, because if you run out of the cash, I think then nobody is going to look at you. And when I started the business, I never ever thought about a venture funding, because if I put my attention or my effort in venture funding, I don't know whether you'll not get. But my only core focus was if we can build a right business model, if you have right kind of paying customers, I think then over a period of time, the business funds on its own. So that's how we built it up.
Excellent. So the common thread I'm hearing in both cases is you let other people finance, whether it's the capacity, whether it is their production, whether it's their logistics, right? But what about when you have to hire people? You still need you to attract high quality people, right? Raj, you want to address that? How do you bring in the right kind of talent in your company if you don't have capital?
So Zoho is now a fairly famous brand in India, and many students from college apply to us as their dream job. But that wasn't the case 20 years ago when we started. So we couldn't even go to the tier 1 colleges and tell them that we are here offering jobs, because it was all going to the Infosys and Wipros and TCS of the world. So 2-3 things that we did to solve this problem was we said, okay, let's go to where the unsung, unheard of, but deserving candidates are. It's a myth that only the top 4 or 5 colleges in the city are actually the ones who have the best talent. It's actually another myth that you need computer science graduates to do software programming for you. So we are a pure software play company, and we realized that there was a lot of talent out there, people in civil engineering, people doing BA, psychology, doing software programming as a labor of love. So we invented methods to reach out to these students, gave them special incubation programs and long interviews and sessions with them, and we were able to attract talent. The second thing that we did was we created something called Zoho University. So just out of 12th standard, instead of just what do I do now, do I do medical, do I do engineering kind of dichotomous world, we gave them an opportunity to actually have a meaningful alternative to conventional college education. So we drafted a 18-month program right within our campus, and we put in some 2 or 3 faculty who were math professors who were reinventing themselves as software trainers. And we went to some small schools in the surrounding where the parents had decided already that we are not going to be able to afford college education for this kid. We administered bilingual tests in English and Tamil, the local language. We absorbed these students. 18 months later, we were able to absorb them into our company as software trainees. So it's no longer an experiment. It's been running for 12 years now. almost like 1 out of every 10 employees at Zoho has never seen the inside of a college campus. So that's how well Zoho University is entrenched into our curriculum, into our recruitment model. The other thing is, the other thing that comes about is retention. How do you retain these employees once you get them in? So there was this famous TED talk by Dan Pink, where he talks about the secret behind motivation. It's not money, it's not on-site job in San Francisco. He talks about 3 important aspects of it. I'll just quickly tell them to you. He talks about autonomy, where you give the person the freedom to actually pursue something that he loves. Every student who enters our campus starts working with us. We make them feel that they are actually autonomous units who are able to pursue their own passion. Somehow, they kind of gravitate towards some particular department or job in the company where they are able to pursue their passion. The second thing after autonomy is mastery. We try to give them a way to continue to get better at what they are doing. So autonomy followed by mastery. So if you give them a ceilingless role where they can keep getting better at what they are passionate about, actually everything else is forgotten. And the third thing is sense of purpose. If you can somehow get into their minds that they are actually building something, an edifice, something that's much larger than they are, something that they can't do alone by themselves, something that they are going to leave behind as a legacy long after they move. Like that famous thing about Google's homepage, where one small character added is going to impact the loading time across billions of searches every day, and hence how many man-hours of effort have been saved. So if you can get the sense of purpose across, you're able to achieve that. So this is something that we have been following too. Autonomy, mastery, and sense of purpose. It's been working out quite well. Thanks.
Very interesting. So one common thread I'm hearing is all the people here have been amazingly creative, right? They've found ways to do things that have not been done before and done them in a very frugal, very, very innovative, very creative way. Wilhelmine, could I request you to touch upon this? So what are the downsides of having capital? Or everybody understands that you lose a little bit of control, you give up a little bit of your equity. Is there some other cost beyond that for having a venture fund?
I started a business with me alone as an employee. I think no employee demands advance salary before he joins. And every employee makes money once he is inside. I think the 3rd month my employees take care of their salaries. Every employee creates salary for 10 more employees. I'm in a services industry. I didn't need a capital at all. And then I found money is coming every day because your product is good, your pricing is good. So if you ask me, funding is something which I never wanted. But having said that, if you go and ask for funds, you generally don't get. But if they have come and if you refuse, generally they don't allow you to sleep. So, food and funds never comes to a man who desperately needs it. And those who don't need it get everyday buffet dinners. And every a banker is telling I am 1% less than what other man is. Coming to, marketing. I must tell my marketing was done by my competition. And in fact, they will go and tell the customer, Thyrocare? Thyrocare is not good. It's very bad. They don't do the test. Every potential customer of mine have been approached by my competitor, and I have become very popular. So I don't think that also needed funds. I think frugal business is most powerful business. Maybe I am successful. My words sound a little more logical, but otherwise also, diluting and taking funds at times is going to be a very big risk. If your business, you yourself cannot raise funds within the family or within your friend circle. I have not borrowed any single rupee for the running of the brand Thyrocare. And finally, a PE guy comes. He wants to put in money. I refuse. He again comes. Then I raise my value. And he again comes. I raise it some more. Finally, किसी एक्सेल सीट नहीं है, कहीं मल्टीपल्स का कुछ लॉजिक नहीं है. ये सलमान खान की स्टाइल में बोलता है, एक बार बोल दिया तो मैं खुद बदल नहीं सकता हूँ. So I am a man who brought up a business from literally nothing, from a 2 lakh rupees. Today it's worth $500 million. I think I'm very happy that I didn't dilute at some stage. And it is important, if it is a good business, please don't dilute. Debt is a better route, and if you can't raise debt, that means you have some problem.
So
And
what
it's
if
important.
you need money just to get started?
I must tell you, I was 37 years old when I started the business. I was not 18 or 19. And 15 years of government service, I must tell you this joke of it. Because a multinational company vice president came and kept his briefcase nearby, removed his tie and asked me, Dr. Velumani, you are my mentor, guru, so I have come to ask you from you one advice. Yes, tell me. I feel like becoming an entrepreneur, what do you advise? I was wondering, I am making him to make such a decision for which I will be responsible tomorrow. So let me ask him a question. What's your annual income? 40 lakhs. What is your annual expenditure? 40 lakhs. Please don't start business. And I had only a 10,000 rupees income in 1995. I think 7,000 was kept at a savings bank account. When I resigned, I had 10 lakhs in my, I didn't buy a house. I have not bought a house. Even today, I don't have a house. I didn't have a car until my employees bought one car for them. So it's very important. अगर आपको दुनिया को रोप जमाना है, दुनिया को दिखाना है, I am a big company's managing director, you dilute your share and purchase your car. To run a business, I don't think, especially tech businesses, especially services industry, funds are not the true limitation. Stamina is the limitation, not the funds. In fact, if you didn't know and you raised a fund, you are gone. Some people think lack of funds is the only problem, but actually they have not studied their business by themselves correctly. At that time, they think, let me get funds inside. I must tell, living frugal is very important, especially for a businessman. Of course, if it is must, there are two things. One is expenditure, another is investment. Please don't borrow for expenditures. Borrow it for investments and growing business.
Very nice. And in fact, a lot of VCs will say exactly the same things. You need to be frugal, you need to be creative, right?
But VCs will not come to you until they see in your balance sheet some funds are extra available. They don't go to company which has huge debt already there. They all look for safe. For VCs, I'm sure some of you must be sitting here. There is something known as security. There is something known as prosperity. There is nothing known as secured prosperity. This is what every VC investing man wants. He wants a secured prosperity, and he looks for a man who is very committed for that.
So I know,
I
Ajay,
think when you talk about funding,
okay.
Initially your entire time goes only with the investors to raise fund, and later on, if you get the funding, then your entire time goes in their agenda, making tall statements. So that is normally what happens. And if you are bootstrapped, you actually know what is the expense that you are supposed to do on each transaction, which normally doesn't happen when your company is funded.
So funding is actually a distraction from growing your business. Let me get to you, Raj, in a second, please. Ajay, I want to get in first. I know you've also had some brushes with investors, and just talking about this point of, we understand that having funds, hurts creativity, right? It makes it easier to spend money rather than do things frugally and creatively. What are the other downsides of going for VC funding? And especially if you could talk about, since you built an amazing technology platform, how do you do that? And Raj, I'll also ask you to chip in on that one. How do you do that without having investments? When you're not, it's not a services, but a product technology investment. So first about, the downsides of venture fund.
So I had in 11 years of building Authbridge, we've had two run-ups to raising money. And on both the occasions, I pulled the plug at almost the last minute. We had the term sheet in hand and we had to just sign it. And I just said, I'm not going to sign it. The reason on both occasions, through that experience was that there was so much of time, management time, which was invested in just creating stories, which I was beginning to realize that a lot of people in the management team themselves don't believe. When you sit down and make a story for a private equity investment or a VC investment, you get your management team together, you say, okay, this is where you want to be 4 years from today. And a lot of those managers are actually professional managers. Some of them don't necessarily believe in the business as much as you do. And they're there in the business because of you, because they believe in you. So you end up spending so much of your time and energy in convincing people that, this is the plan. And then you go out spending a lot of your and management time in building it. It's definitely not an investment worth it. I realized it in both the occasions that had we invested those 6 months that we lost in each of those events, in continuing to build our business, the current growth rate of 60 to 70% year on year that we are getting, we would probably be much better. On investing in technology, so we've as a company way back in 2005 when we were formed, I've always been a big fan of technology. I come from a background of engineering and I've classically looked at business problems just the way, interestingly, Travis explained it just now, by breaking them up into smaller components and trying to solve the smaller components through the right technology intervention. So right from the beginning, I made sure that we had some part of our earning always kept aside to invest back. So I think of business very conventionally. So I said, well, we're first year, maybe second year, we should make a 15% EBITDA in the business. So that 15% EBITDA doesn't mean that 15% money should go into reserves. That 15% money should go into investing back into the company. So at every stage in the growth of the business, I think what I did was I managed the cash deployment very, very carefully. So I looked at what cash the business was generating. And at every stage, I decided what am I going to do with that cash so that we go to the next stage of the business. What I will like to mention here, and I think a lot of fellow entrepreneurs here in this room would have also experienced the same. So I didn't start this company entirely as on my own. There were two other people who partnered with me in starting it, and all three of us had almost equal shareholding. The other two were more financial investors, and I realized within a couple of years of journey that they were not really into the business. They were not really as passionate about the idea and what we were trying to do than about their return on investment. So my first target was to find a way to buy them out. Because if I had to build this business and I had to build it the way I had to build it, then I had to do whatever it takes to buy them out, even if that means taking a lot of risk. So I did take a lot of risk. I can tell you I come from a fairly middle class background, didn't have money in the bank when I started the business. But I bought the investors out at almost 4 times the value of the money that they had invested, the initial partners, to then at one point in time completely own the company. And then I started looking at the cash which was getting generated, and every year 15 to 20% of what we were earning was going back purely into technology. By 2010, we had built a platform which is now taught as a case study in the Cornell University as a part of their operations research MBA program on how a completely manual, paper-driven operation could be converted to an absolute assembly line factory operation. And we brought so much efficiency. Our revenue per head count, which we were tracking, shot up almost by 10 times within 2 years because of the technology intervention. And there was almost an instant ROI. And then I continued to look at, deploying the cash that we were earning. So we've always run our business on cash. And every time I have had investors looking into the business, I've had to distract myself from looking at cash to revenues, because they tend to look at growth and revenue top lines more than the cash. So it's a huge distraction. It was a huge distraction for me personally, and I would probably never do it if I can continue to grow the business the way we are growing.
Thanks. We want to make this a very interactive session. We'd welcome a lot of questions from the floor. Before we get there, Raj, I know you have a point. I have a question, so please just address that in there. A lot of the things we're hearing here about reinvesting, using that to build your business out, makes sense for a services business. But you're in a classic product SaaS business, right? Where you have to build the product before you can see any revenues. How do you address the funding gap there?
So one thing we need to first get clear is the pure software play, building bits versus atoms. His is atoms, actually. So doing bits is actually not as hard as some people think it is. The Linux operating system, the most famous operating system in the world, powering all the internet servers today, was actually built as a side project by a college kid caught in a snowstorm for 15 days. That's how most of these great products start. So let's not convince ourselves wrongly that you need a huge investment to start something in software. You heard Travis today. So sitting in a beach, you can dream up an idea of being a middleman to connect cars and drivers and people who want to get a ride. So let's first understand that building a software, as long as you understand that there is a real need from the customer's side for that software, is actually not a hard job. Most of these great softwares were evening or late night or weekend projects started when somebody was working in some other company. Even Zoho itself was started by 2-3 people who were working in AT&T and Qualcomm long ago. So that's one thing. The second point is fail fast, get it out into the face of the customer, give it away free. We have always had a software program where our products are always available for free. They are not crippled, they are available for trial. You can try it out 15 days, 30 days, and then decide whether you want to use it or not. So you don't even need to register or fill a long form to even download it. The registration was all optional. So when you get more and more people to use it and explore it and start getting customer feedback is when you close that loop, that build, measure, and learn loop much faster, and you start getting that feedback into your product soon. We have never worked in large teams. Our teams were usually 3, 4, 10 people strong. Whenever like that Amazon joke about, if your team is too large to be fed by more than 2 pizzas, you're having trouble. So that's how we have always operated. So it's not about VC funding kills creativity. It's like you start focusing your creativity on the wrong things. So you start putting up, how do we project the numbers right so that the investors will be happy. Even Travis today, to crack a joke about he playing Candy Crush, had to say, in case there are shareholders here, you remember that scene? Yeah, it was like, how we couldn't have built Zoho University for 11 years now if we had that Damocles sword hanging above us about, hey, why are you spending money on teaching people when there are so many colleges out there in the country? So these are things I wanted to get across. So.
Interestingly, even Travis, I think most people didn't catch that. He actually told a horror story of investors, right? Where they put him out of business and spoiled his reputation also, just chasing money. And of course, he's gotten a lot smarter after that experience. However, we also understand that VC funding is not all bad. In fact, there is a lot of good which comes from it also. So it's more about the right circumstances, the right structures. So the question I have for everyone is, under what circumstances would you or have you, I know, Vilamani, you've actually taken PE money finally, you were persuaded, right? So what would a VC have to do, or what would be the right circumstance under which you would actually accept funding? We'll start with you, Raj.
So if Zoho were in the hardware market, If we were doing some IoT or if we were reinventing amazing new quantum chip, it was hardware intensive. We would have wanted quick investment to get that off the starting gates. So at that time, perhaps we must have considered VC funding. Otherwise, they've always wanted to. See, it's like when do you take a steroid shot? I mean, if you're a sportsman, for a 100-meter race is when you get that shot. Usain Bolt or Ben Johnson are the people who went for that, performance-enhancing drugs. If you're running the long run, you hardly ever see a marathoner take drugs because the body doesn't work that way. So if you're in it for the long run, if you're not for quick money, we will never be going for that. Not flip, you're here to stay. In that case, you wouldn't go for it. But if you're looking for a flip and a serial entrepreneurship or a hardware-intensive thing, probably we would have considered.
What's your perspective on this?
See, when we started, it was very, very clear. It had to be asset-light model. So in our business, the investment comes from our vendors who invest in their plant, the chutney plant, or the vada manufacturing plant, or the bakery who makes the pav, or the logistic guy who invests in the thing, or the franchisee invests in the business. So it was a very asset-light model. But going from there over a period of time, if we want the brand to be protected, and if the brand has to be, marketing is required, if you require people to do company-owned stores, then funding is definitely required. So starting up is easy to be asset-light model franchisee, but protection of the brand, doing marketing, getting the training process, it requires definitely
For scale up.
Scale up, yeah.
Right. So the two answers we've heard so far, if you are doing very hardware intensive or very capital intensive new business or for scale up. Velamani, what's your perspective on this?
As I said, for 20 long years, I didn't declare a dividend. I didn't take salary. I live even today inside the laboratory. And I think if you don't take salaries and if you don't declare a dividend and if you still run business for 20 years, there is a likelihood it is worth $1 billion. What happens is very often people just dilute it because their names they want to see in Economic Times in front page. And they think that if funding, if raised, that means it's a very powerful business, why somebody will give fund otherwise. So I think these kind of compulsions only make people to think of taking funds. Having said that, I also made a stupid proposal in the second year of my business. And I told someone that for 25 lakhs, I will give you 25%. And that man probably did not understand, thank God. Otherwise, I would have lost a lot of money. So we don't know what is our value of the product, value of our brand, value of our future. And if you underestimate and sell it, you will repent for it. And I have a reason to believe, go only when you need to scale up the business. You are doing well in one city or one state. Now other states you want to go and you need resources to grow the business. But fortunate for me, even that stage I didn't go for funding. I think 16 long years the business was wonderfully running. किसी का नजर लग गया मेरे ऊपर. Then it all starts, and today I'm happy that I did a PE dilution. Mind you, that is good in some way, because 5 years back they came into company, and a PE run companies more or less run a clean company, and they helped me to clean, unmess whatever things I was messing. And then we have gone for an IPO. That means in an IPO, people look who is there on the board. If there are credible investors on the board, you get a added credibility. So it is a journey in which if you have created a company to run it forever, please just don't dilute, and dilute only that much which is sufficient for you to get it listed. Having said that, funds is certainly not a problem for many businesses. It's the stamina, it's the intelligence, it is a strategy. Of course, if you have got funding and that man has put money in you, he will be sitting on your board, he will be telling all advices once in 3 months. And you can very politely agree and do what you want, because next board meeting when he comes, he will not remember last board meeting what advice he gave you. Don't antagonize with them. And ultimately, a growing business gets it justified. Today the business is very powerful, so I can tell you it was wise to dilute at that stage. If the business is good, jo bhi chahiye wo karo. If business is not good, please make it good. Improvise it, make it perfect. I think investment will automatically come and all will be very keen to be a part of your journey. So according to me, for scaling up, you must go for funds, not for survival. If survival is the big question, and if that time you go for funding, mind you, share purchase agreements, if you read very carefully, heads, I win. Tails, you lose. This is the share purchase agreement. You read it, that will run into 150 pages. But this is what it is mentioned. And share purchase agreements are made by thousands of MBS intelligence. And as a promoter, you don't have that big an intelligence. Fortunately for me, after taking the funds, there was no need for me to read that MOU again. If you don't have to read it again, that means you have done a wonderful business and you have raised a fund in the right time.
So it's about scaling up and good corporate governance, right? Guys, we have only a few minutes left. We'll welcome some questions. But Ashok, I'll quickly.
Yeah,
Ajay,
okay.
I'll
So
quickly let you
I think
finish.
we all
So
have
please come
our,
up to the mics for your questions.
we all have our share of stories as far as what money is mentioned. And
Go ahead, Ajay.
yeah, so when you talk about funds, I think most important is if you are able to share your vision with the investor, or else you are selling it completely. So if these are the two things, then possibly yes, you can go for the funds, because scaling is the most important in today's world, because the small businesses, I don't know what will happen. And for large businesses, if you are able to, if you share the vision with your investors, then yes, you can get into an investment. Otherwise, I think what Dr. Mani is mentioning is perfectly right.
So Ajay, you walked away from the altar twice. What could persuade you to take venture funding now?
I think the business needs to be planned very well. I mean, a lot of times I've seen, now these days, of course, it's a bit of a fashion, I will say. People have paper business plans and they want to raise money without even having a proof of concept in place, which is kind of completely silly. And, seeing other examples and learnings from my own life, I mean, the need to raise money comes in at a much later stage. And a lot of times, if you're running your business in a frugal manner, you're running it intelligently enough, you will find ways and means of continuing to be profitable and generating cash from your business. And in our experience in Authbridge, that cash has always been adequate enough for us to grow very, very rapidly. So we are in 140 countries. We serve almost every nook and corner of India. We have almost every technology in place for trust enablement. And it's all been built bottom up. We haven't had a reason to look at capital from outside. Yes, so in certain businesses at some point in time, if you find the right kind of partners, people who really align with your business, for whom it's the purpose, the larger purpose of your business, and if that alignment comes in, they'll be good people to have as investors from a long-term perspective. But yes, so I mean, personally for me, I'm building this for long term. So for me, only those people who are really passionate about the business and look at the business the same way I do will eventually get a pie of the business, nobody else. I mean, the business otherwise can be still run and grown without external money.
Right. Let's get to the questions.
I'm Saurabh Jain from Fun2Do Labs. And I have a question from the person from Zoho. So I am a little fan of Zoho. I was very happy when I saw Zoho's hoarding on San Francisco airport, because I knew that you have made it now. But when we see companies from US competing with Zoho, so they generally focus on one product, and Zoho has around 20-30 products. So what do you think are the pros and cons of your strategy? Because generally Indian companies want to they focus on the breadth of the things, and the US companies generally they focus on one product and they just want to make it the best. So what are the pros and cons of your approach?
Technically, this is off topic, but can I still take? Yeah. All right. So it's the age of consolidation in terms of cloud software companies. all the cloud software companies that do one product are going to die or get merged into each other. So we call ourselves the operating system on the cloud for your business. So it's just a matter of time before more and more companies realize the importance and the benefits of having a suite of products rather than having multiple tabs and multiple software services, subscriptions from different companies, juggling with passwords, so on and so forth. So this was bound to happen. We knew this long ago, more than 15 years ago, when we decided that we are going to build software to empower companies to move their business into the cloud, that we had to create more and more software suites that worked on a single sign-on. And so that was the game plan from the very beginning, just a matter of time.
Okay, thanks.
So,
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, my question is to Dr. Velumani. Let me introduce
Hello.
myself.
Yeah.
I'm a doctor running a cancer hospital, so we resonate very well with the product what you deal with. I agree that money is not actually the only thing which needs when we are talking about growth. But technology, especially in the areas what I'm talking, oncology, is very technology intensive. And in a country like India, where everything sells, as long as you're willing to compromise, you understand what I mean by willing to compromise. How do you ensure ethics, but still get the technology, what is the cutting edge? Because as you know, today, we are not able to replicate those models. And eventually, if somebody has started up, if he has to be only gobbled up by those people for those very models which we do not want the country to have, how do we scale it up?
The question was too long. I forgot the first part of the question when I was...
I'm sorry, I will, coming back to it, actually ethics versus getting the money and scaling it up.
I think anything done unethical will die even before you're thinking of scaling up. Fundamentally, the product or the service all have to be ethically meeting all standards of either the industry or the needs of the patient. I ran a pathology business. It did not need any funding. I scaled it up because that pathology business scaling up also did not need funding. Now I run another business, which is radiology, and that needs huge funding. And you can't just, I have put up a cyclotron just recently in Delhi. Each cyclotron is 20 crores, and each PET CT is 6 crores. So if your nature of business demands funds, and if you find there is a scaling up necessity to make it powerful business, dilution is must, and you must dilute. I don't think diluting for expansion, as I said, is the best way to make 100 into 1,000, and even owning 60% of 1,000 is much, much bigger than 100% of 100. So I think if you can scale up the business and if the funds are in, ethics is very different subject. I don't think in business anybody can run unethically more than 1 year or 2 years. Somebody crosses a decade, they have to be already, met the needs of the ethical aspects of the business. I hope I have answered you.
Excuse me?
I'll just add one point to that, just on that. Sometimes when we look at capital-intensive businesses or tech-enabled businesses which require upfront capital investment and likes, we forget other sources of fund, right? So we should, and I've seen a lot of merit in engaging very, very closely with banks and other government institutions who are out there to help you. We work very closely with banks. So wherever there has been a need for capital expenditure and we have large server installations and things like that, we've taken short-term loans, let's say for 36 months, and actually paid them back in 24. So it's a kind of victory goal for us that, we've taken a loan for 36 months, we want to return it in 24. Secondly, so the business has always continued to pay for its own expenses. So we've never, kind of, touchwood, had a reason to look for expenses, money for expenses. But we do we do work with lines of credits wherever we have to. So a combination of debt, long-term, debt short-term, and equity is the right combination. But we tend to kind of get aligned these days more towards equity, thinking that that's the lowest risk capital for an entrepreneur, which actually is not. Because the cost of money that you raise through equity for you personally is much, much higher than the cost of money raised through debt. You may sleep a few nights lesser, you may have 2 more years of extra hard work, but that will pay back.
Excuse me?
It's too much glamour. We're running
Just
out of
last
time,
question. I really want to answer question.
Sorry. So the question that I have is for Venkatesh Iyer, who from Goli Vada Pav. Sir, tell me something about blue-collared hiring and retention. These guys are moving out of the jobs that I give to them. I run a restaurant on a highway, and there's a lot of talent crunch. And, and there are competitors around me who have deeper pockets. And on top of that, I'm a young guy who's running an enterprise. How do we retain blue-collared workers? They're just running away for $500, and no amount of philosophical stuff that I've heard in terms of, motivation and all of those things. It's not working out. Like, it's just not. Like, these guys are earning 8,000 rupees, but they aspire for a mobile phone of 60,000 rupees, and at the flip of a button, they'll leave the job if somebody's giving them $500 more. Specifically in the restaurant industry, I want to know this because that's where...
So, I think
we got the question. Before Venki adds up, do you have a story and are you a storyteller? If a CEO has a good story and if he is a good storyteller, you don't even have to pay salaries, people will be around you.
Sense of purpose.
It's very important.
But this does not
I don't
work.
think salaries can retain.
No, but for the blue-collared workers, I think this is failing because, they are going back home without a meal on their plates, but they're using that money to buy alcohol at night. So somehow the storytelling is far beyond their understanding.
I was talking about white collar.
I'm talking only about blue collars. I want the answer to
blue
be
collar,
very
if you don't pay salary, you can't sleep.
No, but that's the whole point, right? They're so casually dispensable.
The question is clear.
We went through a phase where we built this business in Mumbai and then suddenly some political situation happened. I had borrowed money and we lost 4 crores in just 3 months' time. And we had to find a new way to build the business. And we started looking at market outside Mumbai and Pune. And salaries was really a problem for us, not paying salaries for 3 months for blue-collar people. But I'll tell you, somebody who was working in a stores and doing storekeeping job, storekeeping, a blue-collar kind of job, very hardly drawing 4,000-5,000. And when franchising happened across India, Nasik, Aurangabad, and he had only 2 fingers, he was also a disabled person. And a lot of people were leaving our company and going because we were not able to pay salaries. We offered him a challenging job that we wanted to transport these goods from Mumbai to Nasik, Aurangabad, Nagpur, Chandigarh. And this guy liked the fun of talking on the phone. You won't believe this guy handled for 7 to 8 years logistics across India, moved from a salary of 5,000 to 75,000 in 10 years' time. So we found a lot of talent. We somehow think English is intelligent. Sometimes a lot of intelligence can come from people who are not even 10th pass. I'll give you a classic example. We were trying to find a machine to make a pav bhaji, in the starting stage. And we were saying, how do we put a 50-gram pav bhaji on a pav? And I got an instrumentation engineer from Vijay TI who was helping me out. And the guy was serving me tea, not even 5th pass. It was 10 o'clock in the night, we were still figuring out some solution on the board, some instrumentation. He said, sir, ये सब क्यों कर रहे हो? He removed the ice cream scoop, 50 grams, and said, ये निकाल दो, चाय का कप 20 पैसा उसमें डाल दो, दुकान में बेच दो. So it came, a lot of ideas came from people who are not even 10th or 8th pass. So somehow, he said one very important thing is storytelling. We kept on telling the stories. I'll be very frank, when we didn't have salaries, we told the stories. Thanks to Tai and a lot of people, I ended up having a photo with Ratan Tata and Narayan Murthy in 2009. We put it in our office. And then people said, oh, this will happen. A lot of foreign university students used to come to India and listen to our stories. So some of our boys used to say, sir, pagar to time pe nahi dete, but gore log aake bhashan sunte hain, inka kuch to hoga. So that storytelling definitely helped me in retaining some of the boys, So we try and do everything to do the whole thing. But I know, without salaries at the bottom of the pyramid, nothing will work. But you definitely have to give them a career, a storytelling, a mission, somewhere a promise that they can become entrepreneur. That the future is important, imaginary.
Yeah, Venki, I just will
add
one more. If you don't take care of your wife, your neighbor will. And if you don't take care of your employee, the competitor will. So very important is to take care of the employees.
Hi.
I'm sorry, we're out of
Just a
time.
10-second
just-
question.
There's one question I
Just
had.
one
I've been.
10-second question,
sorry.
please.
Excuse me, I'm at the back. I have been. Please.
Can I request you to take the question offline? I'll request the panelists to.
Just one?
Okay, just very quickly, please. And we'll, the panelists, I'll request
So
everybody to be
I was
around.
Googling and I saw this quote by Leo Tolstoy. All happy families resemble one another. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Because see, we're all sharing you success stories here. But I understand that each of your companies is going through a unique problem of your own. The next Mark Zuckerberg is not going to build Facebook. The next Bill Gates is not going to build Windows. So I understand that your problem is unique. So one-to-one mapping and copying will not work. All I wish is good wisdom prevails and do the long run. Good luck.